For more than 50 years, from the early 1940s through the late 1980s, Sammy Davis Jr. performed alongside the biggest names in entertainment. He sang with them, danced with them, toured with them, and attended their private parties. But while audiences saw glamour and friendship, Sammy Davis Jr. witnessed something very different behind the curtain. As one of the most prominent black entertainers of his generation, he experienced the racial realities of Hollywood's golden age in ways few people ever could. Davis was not just another performer trying to break into the industry. He was a member of the legendary Rat Pack alongside Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, sharing stages with the most powerful entertainers in America. Yet even at the height of that fame, he never forgot what he saw behind closed doors. According to accounts in his autobiographies, including Yes, I Can, The Story of Sammy Davis Jr. and Why Me, Hollywood's biggest stars often behaved very differently when the cameras were not rolling. Davis saw how people treated others backstage, in dressing rooms, and in private gatherings where the public image of kindness and charm often disappeared. A longtime associate once explained that Sammy had a perspective nobody else in the industry could match. He was present everywhere. He saw the conversations that happened when no reporters were around. And as a black man working in an industry dominated by white executives and performers, he often witnessed behavior that others either ignored or pretended not to see. The racism he encountered was not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it was subtle, hidden behind smiles and jokes. Other times it was open and unapologetic. Over the decades, Davis observed patterns among some of Hollywood's most celebrated figures. Patterns that revealed how deeply prejudice had shaped the entertainment world. Some stars appeared in films wearing blackface and treated it as harmless comedy. Others helped create films that portrayed racist stereotypes as normal entertainment. A few expressed openly supremacist views in interviews or private conversations without any fear of consequences. These were not isolated incidents or mistakes made in a different time. They were behaviors repeated across decades, shaping the culture of the industry and influencing millions of viewers. One of the earliest and most influential examples came from the man often called the father of American cinema, D.W. Griffith. Griffith revolutionized filmmaking with techniques that still define movies today. He popularized the close-up, experimented with cross-cut editing, and created epic productions that changed the scale of cinema forever. But in 1915 he used that groundbreaking talent to create a film that would leave a dark mark on American history. The Birth of a Nation. The 3-hour epic portrayed the Ku Klux Klan as heroic defenders of the South while depicting newly freed black Americans as dangerous and uncivilized. Every black character in the film was played by white actors in blackface, reinforcing the most extreme stereotypes imaginable. Civil rights organizations protested screenings across the country, but the film was wildly successful. Historians later concluded that its popularity played a major role in reviving the Ku Klux Klan decades after it had nearly disappeared. The influence of that single film reached far beyond Hollywood. It demonstrated how powerful cinema could be in shaping public attitudes, for better or worse. Years later, another beloved figure of the era would face criticism for similar imagery. Shirley Temple was America's most famous child star in the 1930s. With her curly hair, bright smile, and energetic dance routines, she became the #1 box office attraction in the country before she even turned 10. But some of the films that made her famous relied heavily on stereotypes common in that era. In the 1935 film The Littlest Rebel, Temple appeared in a story set during the Civil War that portrayed enslaved people as cheerful and devoted to their owners. At one point, she even darkened her face as part of a disguise in a scene reflecting minstrel traditions of the time. Another major musical star of Hollywood's golden age was Fred Astaire. Known for his elegance and extraordinary talent, Astaire became famous for his iconic dance partnerships and his effortless style on screen. Many historians note that Astaire admired and learned from several black dancers who helped shape tap dancing as an art form. One of them was the legendary performer Bill Robinson. However, in the 1936 film Swing Time, Astaire performed a number called Bojangles of Harlem, while wearing blackface. Although he described the performance as a tribute, critics later argued that it reflected the era's complicated and often troubling relationship with black performers and their influence on American entertainment. Another controversial example from a later era involved Mickey Rooney in the 1961 film Breakfast at Tiffany's. In the movie, Rooney played a Japanese landlord using exaggerated makeup, prosthetic teeth, and a heavily caricatured accent. At the time of its release, the performance received little criticism. But decades later, audiences began to reconsider the portrayal, and it eventually became widely regarded as one of the most offensive stereotypes ever depicted in a major Hollywood film. The controversy became so strong that some television broadcasts edited the character out entirely. Even Rooney himself later expressed surprise at the criticism, claiming that he had never intended to offend anyone. Another superstar of the era was Bing Crosby, whose voice defined American popular music for generations. Crosby recorded the song White Christmas, which remains one of the best-selling singles in music history. Yet in the same film that introduced the song to the world, Holiday Inn, Crosby also performed a musical number while wearing blackface, reflecting entertainment traditions that were still common at the time but are widely condemned today. Another name often mentioned in discussions about Hollywood's complicated history is Walt Disney. Disney created beloved characters like Mickey Mouse and built one of the most powerful entertainment companies in history. However, some of his early productions have been criticized for racial stereotypes. The 1946 film Song of the South was particularly controversial because it depicted life on a southern plantation in a way many critics believed romanticized the realities of slavery. Civil rights groups protested the film when it was released, and it has never been officially released on home video in the United States. Even actors known for playing heroic characters sometimes faced criticism for their attitudes or actions. James Stewart was beloved for roles in films like It's a Wonderful Life, where he portrayed one of the most compassionate characters in movie history. But stories from film sets suggested that even respected actors sometimes struggled with the changing social realities of the 1960s as civil rights debates intensified across America. Another widely admired performer was Walter Brennan, a three-time Academy Award winner known for playing warm and friendly characters in westerns and dramas. Off-screen, however, Brennan was associated with political organizations that strongly opposed the civil rights movement. These contradictions between public image and private beliefs were not unusual during that era. Perhaps the most controversial figure discussed in connection with Sammy Davis Jr.'s experiences was John Wayne, one of the biggest stars in Hollywood history. Wayne appeared in more than 170 films and became the ultimate symbol of the American cowboy and war hero. His rugged screen presence defined masculinity for generations of moviegoers. Yet in a widely discussed 1971 interview with Playboy magazine, Wayne expressed views about race and Native Americans that later sparked intense debate and criticism. What made the situation particularly complicated was that Wayne and Sammy Davis Jr. were known to be friendly in public settings. Wayne had even defended Davis during an incident with hecklers at a performance in Canada. The contrast between public friendship and controversial statements created a lasting debate about how personal beliefs and public actions should be judged. Through it all, Sammy Davis Jr. continued performing and building one of the most remarkable careers in entertainment history. He acted in films, recorded hit songs, and became one of the most versatile performers the industry had ever seen. Despite the obstacles he faced, his talent proved impossible to ignore. Sammy once explained that success did not mean the problems disappeared. It simply meant he had a platform to show that excellence could not be denied. By the time his career ended, Davis had become far more than a performer. He had become a symbol of perseverance in an industry that often failed to live up to its own ideals. Hollywood liked to call its past the Golden Age. But for Sammy Davis Jr., that golden glow often hid a much more complicated truth. Behind the bright lights and glamorous premieres was a world where prejudice, power, and ambition constantly collided. And because Sammy Davis Jr. lived through it all, from backstage conversations to center stage performances, he understood that history in a way few others ever could. His story is not just about the racism he witnessed. It is about the determination it took to succeed anyway. Because despite everything he saw and experienced, Sammy Davis Jr. did something extraordinary. He refused to let any of it stop him from becoming one of the greatest entertainers the world had ever seen. If you love the scandals, rivalries, and secrets behind Hollywood's biggest legends, subscribe to Hollywood Feuds.